Let's start with the accidents that shocked countries and slowly work our way towards the most catastrophic ones on the list. Number 6, Fukushima Daiichi 2011. The only nuclear disaster that started with an earthquake you could feel across an entire nation. March 11, 2011. A 9.0 magnitude quake hits off Japan's coast, and the reactors do exactly what they're supposed to do. They shut down. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. 40 minutes later, a tsunami 50 feet high slams into the plant. The backup generators that keep the cooling systems running, they're in the basement, flooded, dead, gone. 3 reactor cores start melting down simultaneously. Hydrogen builds up inside the containment buildings, and over the next few days, 3 separate explosions blow the roofs clean off. The footage looks apocalyptic. Massive plumes of smoke rising over twisted metal and concrete. Radiation pours into the air and ocean. 154,000 people evacuate. Towns within 12 miles become ghost zones overnight. Here's the thing about Fukushima. 0 people died from radiation exposure at the plant. 0. But over 2,000 died from the stress of evacuation. Mostly elderly patients moved from hospitals and care homes. The Japanese government reported those numbers, and they're brutal. You survive the tsunami, you survive the meltdown, then the evacuation itself takes you out. The cleanup is projected to take 30 to 40 years and cost $200 billion. They're still dealing with contaminated water, over 1 million tons of it, stored in massive tanks covering the site. In 2023, they started releasing treated water into the Pacific, which sparked international controversy because nobody trusts the word treated when it comes to nuclear waste. Fukushima got an INES level 7 rating, the same as Chernobyl, and it did something Chernobyl couldn't. It killed nuclear power expansion in one of the most advanced nations on Earth. Japan shut down all 50 of its reactors. They've restarted some, but the nuclear phase out that followed Fukushima rippled globally. Germany accelerated its exit. Other countries paused new projects. One tsunami, one design flaw, decades of consequences. Number 5, Chernobyl, 1986. The nightmare that made the world afraid of the atom. April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Soviet Ukraine. A safety test goes wrong in the most catastrophically Soviet way possible. Operators disable safety systems to run the test, the reactor becomes unstable, and they lose control. A power surge triggers a steam explosion, then a second explosion blows the 1,000-ton reactor lid into the air and exposes the core to open atmosphere. Burning graphite shoots radioactive material straight up like a volcano. 5.2 million terabecquerels of radioactivity spread across Europe. For context, that's radiation equivalent to hundreds of Hiroshima bombs, all released in one night. The initial explosion kills 2 plant workers instantly. 28 firefighters and plant staff die from acute radiation syndrome in the following weeks. Their bodies literally cooked from the inside. The Soviets send in liquidators, 600,000 of them. These people shovel radioactive debris off rooftops, some of them working shifts measured in seconds because the radiation is so intense. They build the sarcophagus, a concrete tomb over Reactor 4, by hand while being bombarded with gamma rays. Estimates suggest 4,000 to 9,000 of those liquidators developed fatal cancers. UNCER, the United Nations Committee, puts excess cancer deaths between 4,000 and 9,000. Greenpeace claims 200,000. The truth is, we'll never know the exact toll because radiation-induced cancers show up decades later, and the Soviets kept terrible records. 116,000 people evacuated immediately. The 30-kilometer exclusion zone around Chernobyl is still there today, a 2,600 square kilometer dead zone. Pripyat, the city built for plant workers, is frozen in 1986. Ferris wheel, schools, apartments, all abandoned. Wildlife has moved back in, which sounds hopeful until you read the studies showing genetic mutations in the animals. Nature adapted, but it adapted wrong. Chernobyl's legacy is massive. It accelerated glasnost, the Soviet policy of openness, because the government couldn't hide a radiation cloud drifting over Europe. It led to the International Atomic Energy Agency's Convention on Nuclear Safety in 1994, which created global peer review systems for reactor safety. It made an entire generation terrified of nuclear power. Hands down, Chernobyl is the poster child for why we don't cut corners with atoms. Number 4, 3 Mile Island, 1979. The accident that didn't kill anyone but murdered nuclear power in America anyway. March 28, 1979. Near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a stuck valve, a misread instrument panel, and operator confusion create a partial meltdown in Unit 2. About 40% of the reactor core melts. The good news? The containment building does its job. Radiation release is minimal. Roughly 15 curies of iodine-131 escape into the environment compared to 20,000 at Windscale, or millions at Chernobyl. 140,000 people voluntarily evacuate because the media and the recent movie The China Syndrome have everyone convinced they're about to witness a nuclear apocalypse. Panic is the real disaster here. A 1990 Columbia University study found no significant cancer increase in the surrounding population. The health impact was basically zero beyond the fatalities, which were also zero. But 3 Mile Island cost $1 billion in cleanup, and it stopped new nuclear plant construction in America for decades. Not a single new reactor was approved for 30 years after TMI. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission overhauled safety protocols, created the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, and basically rebuilt the entire oversight system, all because of an accident where the safety systems technically worked. Here's the kicker: 3 Mile Island proved containment works. It also proved public perception matters more than facts. You can have the safest technology in the world, but if people are terrified, it doesn't matter. TMI didn't kill people, it killed an industry. Number 3. The SL-1 explosion, 1961. The only fatal reactor accident in US history, and it happened in the middle of nowhere, Idaho on a January night when 3 men made one wrong move. January 3rd, 1961, the Stationary Low Power Reactor Number 1, an experimental Army reactor designed for remote military bases. 3 operators are performing maintenance and one of them manually withdraws a control rod too far. We're talking maybe 20 inches when 4 inches was the maximum safe movement. The reactor goes prompt critical. The power surges instantly, vaporizing coolant and creating a steam explosion that physically lifts the reactor vessel upward. The explosion is so violent it impales one operator on the ceiling with a control rod through his body. All 3 men die. 2 from the trauma of the blast, 1 from extreme radiation exposure, up to 500 rads. Autopsies revealed their bodies were so radioactive that the medical team had to work in shifts. Radiation containment was mostly successful. About 1,100 Curies escaped, but it stayed within the facility. Cleanup took 2 years and cost $22 million. The Atomic Energy Commission investigated and concluded the cause was human error, possibly a control rod that stuck and then released suddenly. Some reports speculated personal tensions among the crew, though that was never confirmed. SL-1's importance is this: it was a wake-up call that even small experimental reactors could kill you instantly if procedures failed. The incident led to design changes like single-rod interlocks, which prevent any one control rod from causing a criticality accident. It's the only time in US history that a reactor killed its operators on site. The only time, and it's why modern reactors have so many redundant safeties that pulling one wrong rod can't end you. Dead. Number 2. Kyshtym disaster, 1957. The nuclear catastrophe the Soviet Union hid from the world for 2 decades, and when it finally came out, nobody could believe the scale. September 29, 1957, at the Mayak Production Association near Kyshtym in the Soviet Union. This facility produced plutonium for nuclear weapons, and it stored high-level radioactive waste in underground tanks cooled by water. Tank 14's cooling system fails. The liquid waste overheats. A chemical explosion equivalent to 70 to 100 tons of TNT detonates, blowing the concrete lid off the tank and shooting 20 million Curies of radioactivity into the atmosphere. Strontium-90 and cesium-137 contaminate over 20,000 square kilometers, an area larger than some countries. The fallout zone, called the East Urals radioactive trace, stretches for hundreds of miles. 270,000 people are exposed. 10,000 are evacuated from 23 villages, but the evacuations happen slowly, some not until a week later. Soviet secrecy kept the event completely classified. The world didn't know until 1976, when exiled scientist Boris Medvedev published details in the West. Even then, many dismissed it as Cold War propaganda. Full confirmation didn't come until after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. By that point, the IAEA estimated 200 to 400 excess cancer deaths, though the real number could be higher given the Soviet Union's record keeping. Restricted zones are still in place today. Wildlife in the area shows genetic mutations. The environmental damage persists 70 years later. Kyshtym got an INES Level 6 rating, one below Chernobyl and Fukushima, but the secrecy makes it more disturbing. This was a government willing to irradiate its own people and then pretend nothing happened for decades. The lesson here is simple. Nuclear accidents are bad. Nuclear accidents you cover up are worse, because you can't learn from what you hide, and you can't protect people from threats they don't know exist. Number 1. Windscale Fire, 1957. Britain's worst nuclear accident. The one that contaminated milk across northern England and parts of Europe, and the one most people have never heard of. October 10th, 1957, at the Windscale site in Cumbria. Pile number 1, a graphite-moderated reactor built to produce plutonium for Britain's nuclear weapons program during the Cold War arms race. Operators are performing a routine and annealing process to release stored energy in the graphite core. They misjudge the temperatures. The graphite catches fire, the reactor core burns for 3 days. Radioactive iodine-131 and other isotopes vent through the chimney stacks, spreading across 500 square kilometers. 20,000 curies of iodine-131 contaminate milk supplies. The government orders a milk ban affecting millions of liters, all dumped to prevent thyroid cancer in children. 150 fuel channels are destroyed. No one dies immediately, but a 2010 UK Health Protection Agency report estimated up to 240 additional cancer cases over the following decades, though exact attribution remains debated because of low radiation doses and confounding factors. Cleanup involved workers like Tom Tuohy, who manually opened inspection ports while being blasted with radiation, heroic efforts that probably saved the entire site from worse contamination. Windscale got an INES level 5, lower than the big disasters, but it was Britain's nuclear wake-up call. It predated Chernobyl by almost 30 years, and it influenced public fear of nuclear technology across Europe. It also led to better reactor designs and international safety standards. The site, now called Sellafield, is still dealing with decommissioning and waste management. Here's why Windscale matters. It was one of the earliest major accidents in the atomic age, proof that even advanced nations with top scientists could lose control of the atom. It showed that nuclear accidents don't need to kill immediately to cause massive societal disruption. And it demonstrated that when you're racing to build bombs, safety can become an afterthought with consequences that last generations. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, click the video on screen now.